Judge Devin Mitchell stood in handcuffs outside a Tennessee convenience store at 11:30 p.m. 3 officers surrounded him. His charcoal suit was dusty from being pressed against the patrol car. Officer Craig Henderson smirked. "Wrong town for a car like that, friend." Devin, 48 years old, said nothing. His hands stayed visible. His voice stayed calm. "License and registration, now." Henderson's tone was cold and hostile. Devin reached slowly into his jacket. Every movement was deliberate and careful. Every gesture telegraphed complete compliance. "Step out of the vehicle." Devin stood immediately. Officer Tyler Barnes circled the Mercedes with his flashlight beam. "Nice ride here. How does someone like you afford something like this?" Devin didn't answer him. Sergeant Peter Caldwell pulled up in a third cruiser. "What do we have?" "Suspicious activity," Henderson said firmly. "Matches the description perfectly." "Description of what?" Devin asked quietly. Henderson ignored him completely. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." The handcuffs clicked shut tight. Cold steel bit into his wrists. Inside the store, the clerk pulled out his phone quickly, started recording everything. Devin was loaded into Henderson's cruiser roughly. The door slammed shut hard. His briefcase sat in the Mercedes passenger seat. Inside was a gavel-shaped paperweight carefully engraved. Honorable Devin J. Mitchell, 6th Circuit Court. Nobody looked inside. In 2 weeks, Devin would sit in the judge's chair. These 3 officers would stand before him as defendants. If you believe that no one should ever face wrongful arrest simply for driving through the wrong town at night, comment below with your country and city. Let's see where people stand against police abuse of power worldwide. Your participation shows that accountability knows no borders. The Crawford County Sheriff's Department smelled of industrial disinfectant and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in harsh white light. Devin was processed at 12:30 a.m. Desk Sergeant Linda Collins had seen everything twice in her 28 years. Her eyes were tired but sharp. Henderson filled out the arrest report with quick, practiced strokes. Suspicious activity, failure to comply, possible vehicle theft. Collins raised an eyebrow. Vehicle theft. Registration came back clean. High-end car, Henderson said. Out-of-state plates, 11:30 at night. Run his record, Caldwell said. Collins typed. The system loaded slowly. No priors, not even a parking ticket. A completely clean record stretching back 30 years. Henderson, Collins said slowly. Maybe we should book him, Caldwell interrupted. Disorderly conduct. We'll sort it in the morning. Collins hesitated. Something felt wrong. But orders were orders. She printed the custody receipt. Devin watched this exchange. His face showed nothing. No anger, no fear, just calm observation. "I'd like to make my phone call," Devin said quietly. Caldwell looked at him with barely concealed contempt. "Phone system's down. You'll call in the morning." "That's a violation of—" "Don't tell me my job, sir." Caldwell's voice dripped with sarcasm. Devin stopped talking. A slight smile touched his lips. The first time he'd smiled all night. Henderson noticed. "What's funny?" "Nothing, officer," Devin said. "I'll wait." What they didn't know, Devin's absence had already triggered alerts. His court clerk expected a check-in call by midnight. His wife, Sarah, a prominent civil rights attorney, expected the same. The State Bar Association had protocols for traveling judges. When judges don't check in, people notice. Devin was placed in holding cell number 3. Concrete walls, metal bench, the smell of decades of fear and resignation. He sat upright. His tie was still knotted. He folded his jacket beside him carefully. Devin lay on the cell bench at 2:00 a.m. His eyes were open. 3 rooms away, his phone sat in an evidence locker. It buzzed continuously. 47 missed calls. His watch caught the light. Patek Philippe Nautilus. $85,000. Henderson had seen it earlier. He'd assumed it was fake. His wedding ring had an inscription visible when light hit it right. To Judge Mitchell, love eternal. Nobody had looked closely enough. At 2:17 a.m., Marcus heard footsteps. A guard walked past on rounds. "Officer," Devin spoke softly. What's the date? August 1st. Why? Just keeping track, Devin said. The guard left. Devin closed his eyes. He knew the rotation schedule. Tennessee rotates visiting judges from other districts to handle overflow cases. He'd checked it before leaving Atlanta. August 14th, Crawford County Circuit Court. Visiting judge assignment. His assignment. He smiled again in the darkness. Collins, the desk sergeant, came back to check on him at 3:00 a.m. She stood outside the cell quietly. You a lawyer? Collins asked. Something like that, Devin said. Collins nodded slowly. She walked away, but she pulled Devin's custody file. She read the Bar Association card entry carefully. Her eyes widened. She said nothing. Not yet. But she knew something was very wrong with this arrest. What they didn't know, Devin's badge wasn't in his wallet. It was waiting on the bench of the courtroom where he'd preside in just 2 weeks. At 6:45 a.m., Devin's wife Sarah called the Crawford County Sheriff's Office. The receptionist answered on the third ring, sounding bored. I'm looking for my husband, Devin Mitchell. He was arrested last night. Hold, please. The line clicked. Silence. Then Sergeant Caldwell's voice came through, irritated at being bothered this early. Ma'am, your husband refused to cooperate. He'll see a magistrate this afternoon. This afternoon? Sarah's voice was sharp, professional. She was a civil rights attorney with 16 years of experience. That's a 14-hour hold without arraignment. That's unconstitutional. Caldwell hung up. Sarah immediately called the Tennessee State Bar Association. She spoke with Director Patricia Carmichael, who'd been with the bar for 23 years. They're holding a judge, Sarah said. Her voice was controlled but furious. Without cause, without his phone call. They don't even know who he is. Carmichael went silent. Then, which judge? Devin Mitchell, 6th Circuit. Oh, God. At 8:00 a.m., the Bar Association called the Tennessee Attorney General's office. At 8:15, Chief Judge Patricia Stewart learned her colleague was in custody. Judge Stewart had mentored Devin for 2 decades. She'd watched him rise from public defender to circuit judge. She knew his temperament. She knew his precision. She made one phone call to the Attorney General. Don't release him yet. Let this play out. It sounded cruel. It wasn't. It was strategic. If Devin was released quietly, nothing would change. But if this went to court, if the data came out, if the pattern was exposed, real reform could happen. The gas station videos went viral. By 9:00 a.m., 340,000 views. The customer who filmed it posted on Twitter with hashtags, driving while black, Crawford County, wrong town. A civil rights journalist picked up the thread. She broke down the timeline in a detailed thread. Well-dressed man. Full compliance. No probable cause stated. Body cams mysteriously corrupted. Matches description of what crime? None reported in the county that night. Local news called the sheriff's department. We're hearing about an arrest last night. Can you comment? The receptionist transferred them to Sheriff Tom Harrison. Harrison was 58, 3 terms, elected official. He'd survived scandals before. But he felt something different this time. Something bigger. He pulled up the custody log, then the gas station footage someone had emailed anonymously. He watched Devin comply. He watched Henderson escalate. He watched 3 officers surround one calm man. No resistance, no aggression, just quiet compliance. Harrison called Henderson into his office. What the hell happened? Routine stop, sir. He was aggressive. Harrison turned his computer screen around. Watch this. Tell me where he's aggressive. Henderson watched. His face tightened. Clips can be edited. This is raw footage from the gas station security system. Time-stamped, continuous, unedited. Henderson said nothing. Caldwell entered the office. His wife's raising hell. She's some kind of lawyer. Harrison made a calculation. A political calculation. Cite and release. Get him out by noon. Disorderly conduct fine. $500. He'll pay and leave. Sheriff, Do it. What Harrison didn't do. Check who Devin actually was. He just wanted the problem gone, the video deleted, the story buried, but it was too late for that. Devin sat in his cell. His suit was wrinkled now, his tie was loosened, but his spine was still straight, his hands were still folded. He was the calmest person in the building. At 10:30 a.m., Collins came to his cell. "Judge Mitchell," she said quietly, "I know who you are." Devin looked at her, said nothing. "I read your bar association card. I checked the judicial rotation schedule." She paused. "You're the visiting judge for August 14th. "I am." "These officers don't know." "No, they don't." Collins looked at him. "What are you going to do?" "What I always do, Sergeant Collins. My job." She nodded. She understood. "They're releasing you at noon. Cite and release." "Thank you for telling me." "Judge Mitchell," Collins said, "I've worked here 19 years. I've seen things that made me ashamed, but I never had the power to change anything. You have more power than you think. Your testimony will matter." Collins looked surprised. "You want me to testify?" "If it comes to that, will you?" She thought about it. Thought about her pension, her job, her safety. Then she thought about all the people she'd processed, all the questionable arrests, all the times she'd stayed silent. "Yes," she said, "I will." Devin nodded. "Thank you." While Devin sat in that cell with perfect composure, 3 different state agencies were already pulling Crawford County's arrest records going back 5 years. The numbers they found would shock everyone. At 11:00 a.m., Devin was brought to the magistrate court. Basement level, concrete walls, fluorescent lighting that hummed constantly. Magistrate Linda Cooper presided, 42 years old, part-time position. She handled minor offenses with assembly line efficiency. Standard procedure: name, charge, plea, bail. Next case. "Name," Cooper said without looking up. "Devin Jonathan Mitchell." Cooper glanced at the paperwork. "Charged with disorderly conduct. How do you plead?" "Not guilty." Cooper's fingers moved across her keyboard, scheduling automatically. Hearing date set for August 14th, 10:00 a.m. Bail set at $1,000. Devin's eyes flickered, just for a second. August 14th. He paid the bail from his wallet. Cash. Crisp hundreds. He collected his belongings methodically. His briefcase, his phone, his watch, his wedding ring. As he signed the release forms, he looked up at Cooper. "Magistrate Cooper, are you familiar with Judicial Conduct Canon 3:2? Cooper blinked. "What?" "You'll want to review it. Good day." Devin walked out at 11:47 a.m., exactly 12 hours after his arrest. 23 reporters waited on the courthouse steps. Cameras flashed like lightning. Questions flew from every direction. "Were you mistreated? Will you sue? Do you think this was racially motivated?" "Judge Mitchell, what happened in there?" Devin stood at the microphone cluster. Sarah stood beside him, professional and fierce. He raised one hand. The crowd quieted immediately. His statement was 100 words. Measured. Devastating. "I am Judge Devin Mitchell of the 6th Circuit Court of Georgia. Last night I was arrested without probable cause by Crawford County officers. I complied fully with every command. Their body cameras were mysteriously corrupted. I was denied my phone call for 12 hours. I've served 18 years on the bench. I've presided over 4,000 cases. I have never, not once, been on the defendant's side of a courtroom until yesterday. This experience has clarified something I thought I understood. I did not. No further questions." He walked to his Mercedes. He drove away. Within 30 minutes, CNN picked it up. MSNBC, Fox News, ABC, CBS. The headlines varied, but the shock was universal. Federal judge arrested at convenience store. Judge held 12 hours without cause. Body cam footage missing in judge's arrest. Black judge wrongfully detained in Tennessee. Back at Crawford County Sheriff's Department, Harrison watched the news. His face went pale. Completely white. "Get me everything," he told his assistant. Every report, every recording, every piece of paper, every digital file, everything. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation opened an inquiry that afternoon. 2 investigators arrived at the station at 2:00 p.m. sharp suits, serious faces, recording devices. "We need the body cam footage from last night's arrest." Henderson sat across from them in the interrogation room, the same room where he'd questioned hundreds of suspects. Now he was on the other side. Technical malfunction. All 3 cameras? Yes. Simultaneously? Yes. The lead investigator leaned forward. His voice was calm, professional. "Officer Henderson, the statistical probability of 3 independent devices failing at the exact same moment is 0.003%. Would you like to revise your statement?" Henderson said nothing. His lawyer, provided by the county, advised him to remain silent. They pulled the jail security recordings, audio from inside the station. One clip caught Caldwell talking to Henderson in the break room at 1:30 a.m. "You didn't tell me he had Georgia plates with a government exemption sticker." "So what? Plenty of state employees have those." "Judges get those, Henderson. Judges." "We didn't know." "Judges. We arrested a judge." The investigators listened. They made notes. They said nothing yet. But they knew. This was going to be much bigger than anyone realized. The evidence was mounting systematically. Gas station footage showed no disorderly conduct. Customer videos corroborated Devon's complete compliance. Jail logs showed the phone system was operational. 3 other inmates made calls during Devon's detention. The timestamps proved it. Dispatch recordings showed no robbery reported in Crawford County that night. 0 violent crimes, 0 thefts, 0 suspicious activity calls. Match's description was completely fabricated. Judge Patricia Stewart, Crawford County Circuit Judge, called an emergency meeting with Sheriff Harrison. Stewart was 62, tough, fair. She'd served Crawford County for 20 years. She'd seen administrations come and go. But this was different. "Do you understand what you've done?" Her voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. "It was a mistake," Harrison said. "We'll apologize. We'll settle." "It's not your apology to give. You arrested a federal circuit judge. The 6th Circuit has jurisdiction over Tennessee. We didn't know. That's worse. You arrested a man without probable cause. The fact that he's a judge just makes it impossible to sweep under the rug." Harrison sat down heavily. "What do we do?" "You wait." He scheduled his hearing for August 14th. "Do you know who the visiting judge is that day?" Harrison shook his head. "Check the rotation." Harrison pulled up the public schedule on his computer. His face went white, completely colorless. Visiting judge, August 14th, Crawford County Circuit Court, Honorable Devon J. Mitchell. "Oh, God." "Yes," Stewart said. "Oh, God." The magistrate had no idea that the man he just arraigned would soon be sitting in the judge's chair, reviewing the very case he'd just processed. What neither Harrison nor Stewart knew yet, the 6th Circuit had launched a formal review of Crawford County's arrest patterns. Devon's case was the catalyst, but data analysts were already pulling 5 years of records, downloading everything: traffic stops, arrests, charges filed, charges dropped, convictions, acquittals. Early findings showed a disturbing pattern. Black drivers were arrested at 7.2 times the rate of white drivers for suspicious activity. The numbers didn't lie. They never do. Devon spent the next 2 weeks preparing, not his defense, his prosecution. He worked from his home office in Atlanta. Sarah brought him coffee every morning at 6:00 a.m. He'd already be awake, already working. Files spread across his desk, legal pads covered with notes, statistical analyses printed and highlighted. "You're building a case," Sarah said one morning. "I'm building a system," Devon corrected. "A case is temporary, a system is permanent." Sarah smiled. This was why she'd fallen in love with him 23 years ago. His mind didn't just solve problems, it prevented them. The media coverage intensified daily. Legal analysts debated the case on television. Constitutional scholars wrote op-eds. Civil rights organizations issued statements. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund offered assistance. The ACLU sent lawyers. The Southern Poverty Law Center opened an investigation into Crawford County's policing patterns. Devin declined most of the help. He had a specific plan. Too many voices would dilute the message. But he accepted one offer. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, statistician, PhD from Stanford, expert in analyzing law enforcement data for bias patterns. She'd testified in 47 cases across 12 states. Her analyses had led to consent decrees in 8 cities. Dr. Rodriguez arrived in Atlanta on August 3rd. She brought her laptop, her software, and 5 years of Crawford County data that the Sixth Circuit had provided. They worked in Devin's office for 6 days straight. Sarah brought meals. They barely noticed. "Look at this," Dr. Rodriguez said on day 3. Her screen showed color-coded charts. Red areas clustered heavily in certain neighborhoods. Traffic stops in predominantly black neighborhoods happen at 3 times the rate. But citation rates are identical. Same violations, same frequency. But stops are 3x. "They're phishing," Devin said. "Exactly, and look at search rates." Another chart appeared. Black drivers are searched at 12.3 times the rate of white drivers, but contraband is found at lower rates. If the searches were justified, you'd expect equal or higher contraband rates, but it's inverted. Because they're searching without real probable cause. Correct. Devin studied the numbers. What about arrest outcomes? Dr. Rodriguez pulled up another data set. 89% of suspicious activity arrests of black individuals result in dropped charges or acquittals. For white individuals, it's 34%. Devin leaned back. So they're arresting black people without sufficient evidence. The cases fall apart in court, but the arrest record remains. And arrest records affect employment, housing, loans, even if charges are dropped. It's a system of control disguised as law enforcement. Yes. They worked through the night. By dawn on August 9th, they had a complete statistical profile. 47 pages, charts, graphs, regression analyses, control variables, peer comparisons with similar counties. The conclusion was inescapable. Crawford County engaged in systematic discriminatory enforcement. Meanwhile, the viral footage continued spreading. The convenience store video hit 2 million views. Someone created a side-by-side comparison. Devin's calm compliance next to the audio of Henderson's aggressive commands. The contrast was stark. A musician created a song using the audio. "Wrong town for you." It went viral on TikTok. 3 million views in 48 hours. Henderson, Barnes, and Caldwell were placed on administrative leave pending the TBI investigation. They collected full pay but couldn't work. The police union issued a statement supporting them. Dedicated officers following protocol. But the protocol itself was the problem. Community meetings erupted in Crawford County. The black community, which comprised 23% of the population, had stories. Decades of stories. Traffic stops without cause. Searches without reason. Arrests without evidence. One woman, 74 years old, stood up at a county commission meeting. "My grandson was arrested 6 times. 6 times. Never convicted. Not once. But he can't get a job now because background checks show 6 arrests. You destroyed his life without ever proving he did anything wrong." The room erupted in applause. Another man, a teacher. "I've been stopped 47 times in 8 years. I drive the same route to school every day. 47 times. I've gotten 3 tickets. 3. So why was I stopped 44 other times?" The commissioners sat silently. They had no answers. Rosa Martinez, the convenience store clerk who recorded the arrest, was interviewed by CNN. 24 years old, college student working nights to pay tuition. "I recorded because I've seen this before, many times, but this time felt different. The man was so calm, so dignified, and they treated him like a criminal. I knew it was wrong." "Were you afraid to record?" the interviewer asked. "Yes, but I was more afraid of staying silent." Her interview was viewed 6 million times. Applications to law school increased. Rosa's story inspired dozens of young people to pursue legal careers, to fight the system from inside. Devin watched all of this from Atlanta. He gave no more interviews, made no more statements. He was preparing for August 14th. Sarah found him in his office on August 12th, 2 days before the hearing. "Are you ready?" she asked. Devin looked at the files. The data, the evidence, the carefully constructed case. "I'm ready." "What if they try to settle? Offer you money to make this go away?" Devin shook his head. "This isn't about money. It never was. It's about making sure this never happens to anyone else. Not in Crawford County. Not anywhere." Sarah kissed his forehead. "That's why I love you." August 14th arrived with clear skies. Devin packed his car carefully, his judicial robes, his briefcase, the gavel paperweight that had started all of this, Dr. Rodriguez's statistical analysis, every piece of evidence. He drove to Crawford County, the same route he'd taken 2 weeks earlier, past the same convenience store where he'd been arrested. The clerk, Rosa, had put up a sign in the window, "Justice for Judge Mitchell." Devin pulled into the courthouse parking lot at 8:30 a.m. Media trucks lined the street, cameras everywhere. He walked past them all without comment. Inside, the courtroom was packed, every seat filled, people standing in the back, more watching from overflow rooms with video feeds. Henderson, Barnes, and Caldwell sat at the defendant's table with their attorney. County Attorney Marcus Foster sat with them. He looked overwhelmed. He'd been assigned this case 5 days ago. He'd spent those 5 days trying unsuccessfully to get the charges dismissed. But everyone had told him the same thing. Let it proceed. At 9:58, the bailiff entered. All rise. The room stood as one. The Honorable Judge Devin J. Mitchell presiding. What the cameras didn't capture would be far more damaging to these officers than anything the public could see. The door opened. Devin entered in full judicial robes, black fabric flowing, dignified. He walked with the same calm he'd shown in handcuffs 2 weeks earlier. His gavel, the one from his briefcase, rested on the bench in front of his chair. He sat. He arranged his papers with precise movements. He looked up at the packed courtroom. "Please be seated." The room sat. You could hear breathing. You could hear hearts beating. Devin's voice was clear, steady, professional. "This is case number 2024 CR 1847, the State of Tennessee versus Officers Craig Henderson, Tyler Barnes, and Sergeant Peter Caldwell. Charges: deprivation of civil rights under color of law, false arrest, and falsification of police records. How do the defendants plead?" County Attorney Foster stood. His hands shook slightly. Papers rustled. "Your Honor, I move for your recusal based on..." Motion denied. "Your Honor, I haven't stated my grounds." "You don't need to, Counselor. Judicial Canon 3. 2 allows a judge to preside when the judge is a material witness to the facts, not merely a victim. I witnessed every moment of the events in question. I am uniquely qualified to hear this case. Your motion is denied. How do your clients plead?" Foster looked at the 3 officers. Henderson stared at the table. Barnes looked physically ill. Caldwell's jaw was clenched so tight his muscles were visible. "Not guilty, Your Honor." Noted. Prosecution may present its opening statement. The prosecutor from the Attorney General's office stood. Sarah Mitchell sat in the front row. She was not prosecuting. That would have been too much conflict. But she was there, watching, bearing witness. The prosecutor was Rachel Morrison, 15 years with the AG's office. She specialized in civil rights violations. She'd prosecuted 12 cases against law enforcement, won 9 convictions. She laid out the case methodically: wrongful arrest without probable cause, civil rights violation under federal law, falsification of records regarding body camera malfunction, denial of constitutional right to phone call. "The evidence will show a pattern of deliberate misconduct," Morrison said. "Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding. Deliberate violation of Judge Mitchell's constitutional rights. And the evidence will further show this was not an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern of discriminatory enforcement in Crawford County." Then came the evidence. Exhibit A. Surveillance footage from the convenience store. The video played on courtroom screens. High definition, time-stamped, every second documented. Devin narrated his own arrest. His voice was clinical, detached, like he was describing someone else's experience. Note at timestamp 23:47:19. Officer Henderson approaches with hand near weapon. At 23:47:55. I provide license and registration without hesitation. At 23:49:12 I am handcuffed without stated probable cause. The footage showed everything. Devin's absolute compliance, Henderson's escalating aggression, Barnes circling the car like a predator, Caldwell arriving and immediately assuming Devin was guilty of something. The courtroom watched in complete silence. Exhibit B. Body camera audit. A TBI investigator took the stand. Special Agent Marcus Williams, 22 years with TBI, expert in digital forensics. All three officers' body cameras were manually disabled at 23:42, 6 minutes before initial contact with Judge Mitchell. Devin looked directly at Henderson. Officer Henderson, is it standard protocol to disable recording equipment before a traffic stop? Foster stood. Objection. Leading. Overruled. The officer will answer. Henderson cleared his throat. I don't recall. Let me help your memory. The device logs show you pressed the disable button 3 times in succession. That requires deliberate action. Did you or did you not manually disable your body camera? Silence stretched out. Henderson's attorney whispered urgently in his ear. Officer Henderson, answer the question. Yes. Yes what? Yes, I disabled it. Why? I don't remember. Devin held up a technical manual. According to the manufacturer's specifications and your department's own policy manual, body cameras are designed to be continuously operational during any citizen interaction. The device doesn't forget, Officer Henderson, even if you do. Why did you disable your camera? I thought there might be technical issues. Before you even made contact with me, you anticipated technical issues 6 minutes in advance. Henderson said nothing. Noted for the record, Officer Henderson has no explanation for deliberately disabling his recording device immediately before arresting me. The jury, 12 citizens of Crawford County, watched all of this. Their faces showed shock, confusion, growing anger. Exhibit C, dispatch records. Devin entered them into evidence personally. He read from the log with perfect clarity. August 1st, 2024. Crawford County Dispatch, 0 robbery reports, 0 theft reports, 0 violent crime reports between the hours of 6:00 p.m. and midnight. He looked at Caldwell. Sergeant Caldwell, you told me I matched a description. Description of what crime? Caldwell stared straight ahead. His face was stone. Sergeant, you're under oath. I believe there was a report. You believed wrong. Or you lied. Which is it? Foster objected. Devin sustained it. But the point was made. The jury had heard it. Exhibit D, phone call logs and security footage. The evidence was damning. Security footage from the jail showed 3 inmates making phone calls during Devin's detention. Time-stamped. Audio recorded. The phone system was fully operational. Devin played the audio. 3 different voices, 3 successful calls. Clear reception. No technical issues. Sergeant Caldwell, you told me the phone system was down. Was that statement true? I thought it was. You thought wrong. Again. How many times can you be mistaken in one night, Sergeant? The jury watched. They were piecing it together. This wasn't mistakes. This was deliberate. Morrison called Desk Sergeant Collins to the stand. She'd agreed to testify despite the risk to her career. Sergeant Collins, you were on duty the night of August 1st? Yes. Did Judge Mitchell request his phone call? Yes, multiple times. Was the phone system operational? Collins took a breath. Yes, fully operational. I personally witnessed 3 other inmates make calls that night. Why wasn't Judge Mitchell allowed to call? Sergeant Caldwell ordered me not to allow it. Did he give a reason? He said the system was down, but I knew it wasn't. I didn't question it. Why not? Collins looked ashamed. Because I've learned not to question Sergeant Caldwell's orders. The courtroom absorbed this. A culture of obedience, of not questioning, of going along. Did you know Judge Mitchell was a judge that night? Not initially, but I discovered it around 3:00 a.m. when I read his Bar Association card in his personal effects. What did you do with that information? Nothing. I was afraid. Of what? Of retaliation. Of losing my job. Of being labeled a troublemaker. Morrison nodded. Thank you, Sergeant Collins. Your courage in testifying today is noted. Devon watched Collins step down. She'd risked everything to tell the truth. That mattered, but the most devastating evidence was still coming. 3 body cameras, 3 experienced officers, all corrupted at the exact same moment. The statistical probability, 0.003%. The TBI investigators' conclusion, deliberate tampering. Exhibit E statistical analysis of Crawford County arrest patterns. This was the bomb. The evidence that would transform this from an individual case into a systemic reform. Devon introduced the analysis carefully. 47 pages, 5 years of data, every arrest, every traffic stop, every search, every outcome. Dr. Elena Rodriguez took the stand. Her credentials were impeccable. PhD from Stanford. Expert witness in 47 cases. Published researcher. Her work had led to consent decrees in 8 major cities. Morrison led her through the findings methodically. Dr. Rodriguez, you analyzed 5 years of arrest data from Crawford County. Can you summarize your findings? Yes. The data shows clear, statistically significant disparities in how Black individuals and white individuals are treated by Crawford County law enforcement. Can you be specific? Black drivers are stopped at 3 times the rate of white drivers in Crawford County. They're searched at 3 times the rate, and they're arrested for suspicious activity at 2 times the rate. The courtroom went silent. The numbers hung in the air like smoke. What about outcomes of these arrests? That's where it gets particularly troubling. 89% of suspicious activity arrests of Black individuals result in dropped charges or acquittals. For white individuals arrested for the same charge, that number is only 34%. What does that tell you? It tells me that arrests of Black individuals are being made without sufficient evidence. The cases can't withstand judicial scrutiny. But the arrest record remains, affecting employment, housing, and future interactions with law enforcement. Morrison pulled up a chart on the courtroom screens. Color-coded. Undeniable. Dr. Rodriguez, in your expert opinion, what explains these disparities? The data is consistent with systematic discriminatory enforcement. When you control for all other variables, time of day, location, reported crime rates, officer assignment, the disparity persists. The only consistent variable is race. Devon leaned forward slightly. Dr. Rodriguez, in statistical analysis, what do we call a pattern this pronounced? Systemic discrimination, Your Honor. Devon turned to Foster. Mr. Foster, does the county dispute these findings? Foster looked at his notes. He had nothing. The county had been provided this analysis 6 weeks ago. They'd had ample time to conduct their own analysis. They hadn't. We need time to review the methodology. You've had 6 weeks, Counselor. The methodology was provided on July 1st. The county has had ample time. Do you dispute the findings or not? Foster looked at Henderson, Barnes, and Caldwell. They had no answers. We cannot confirm the accuracy. That's not what I asked. Do you dispute the findings? Yes or no? Foster sat down heavily. No, Your Honor. Devon nodded. Let the record reflect that the county does not dispute the statistical findings showing a 7.2 times disparity in arrest rates. He turned to the 3 officers. He looked at each one carefully. Henderson, Barnes, Caldwell. Gentlemen, you have 2 choices. 1. This proceeds to full trial where every arrest you've made in 5 years will be scrutinized. Every traffic stop, every search, every report, every interaction. 2. You accept a consent decree that includes your immediate suspension without pay, mandatory bias training, and 2 years of probation. Your employment futures will depend on your compliance and the county's reform measures. You have until after lunch to decide. He struck the gavel once. The sound echoed through the courtroom. Court is in recess. Devon stood. He exited through the judge's chambers. The courtroom erupted in whispers, gasps, shocked conversations. Dawkins sat frozen. Barnes put his head in his hands. Caldwell stared at the bench where Devon had sat. Foster turned to them in the hallway outside. "Take the deal." "We didn't do anything wrong," Henderson said. But his voice lacked conviction. "You arrested a judge without probable cause. Your body cameras were deliberately corrupted. You lied about a robbery that never happened. You denied him his constitutional right to a phone call. The statistical evidence shows you're part of a pattern of discriminatory enforcement. A jury will convict you in 20 minutes. Take the deal." Foster's voice was harsh, final. Barnes spoke quietly. "What happens if we take it? 90 days suspension without pay, then 2 years probation. Any citizen complaint triggers immediate review. Second violation equals termination. You'll complete bias training. Your records will show disciplinary action, but not criminal conviction. And if we don't? Criminal trial. If convicted, you lose your jobs permanently. You lose your pensions. You'll never work in law enforcement again. You might face jail time. And every arrest you've ever made gets reviewed. Every single one. Some will be overturned. People you put away might go free. Your entire careers will be questioned." Caldwell finally spoke. "This is because he's a judge. If he was anyone else, this would still be wrong," Foster interrupted. "The only difference is, if he was anyone else, no one would be paying attention. That's the problem. That's exactly what the data shows. You've been doing this for years, to people who couldn't fight back. Judge Mitchell can fight back, and he's not doing it for himself. He's doing it for everyone you've ever done this to." The 3 officers sat in silence. Inside the judge's chambers, Devon sat with Sarah and Dr. Rodriguez. "That was devastating," Sarah said. "It needed to be," Devon replied. "The data doesn't lie. It can't be argued with. It just is." "Do you think they'll take the deal?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. "Yes, they have no choice. The evidence is overwhelming." Sarah looked at her husband. "You're not doing this for revenge, are you?" "No. I'm doing this because the system that arrested me has arrested thousands of others. Most of them didn't have my resources, my education, my position. This isn't about me. It never was. What's the end game? Structural reform, policy changes, accountability systems that outlast me, data collection that makes it impossible to hide disparities, civilian oversight that provides real checks on power. That's the end game." At 2:00 p.m., court reconvened. The courtroom was even more packed than before. Word had spread during lunch. This was history. Foster stood. His shoulders were slumped, defeated. "Your Honor, the defendants accept the consent decree terms." Devon nodded once. "Let the record reflect that acceptance. Now we address the systemic issues that allowed this to happen." He read the terms aloud, every word, every condition. His voice was steady, authoritative. "Officers, Henderson, Barnes, and Caldwell, suspended without pay for 90 days, then 2 years probation. Any citizen complaint triggers immediate review. Second violation equals termination." The 3 officers stood as these terms were read. They looked smaller somehow. Sheriff Harrison, not criminally charged, but must implement comprehensive reforms within 180 days or face removal proceedings. Harrison sat in the gallery. He nodded slowly. He understood. Department-wide bias training. All 47 Crawford County officers must complete 40 hours of certification, repeated annually. Devon continued through each reform, each requirement, each accountability measure. The courtroom listened to every word. When he finished, he looked at the 3 officers one final time. "This consent decree is not punishment. It's education. 7.2 times. Black drivers in Crawford County were arrested at 2 times the rate of others. And tomorrow, those officers would face the one judge who'd experienced it firsthand. You will learn what I learned in that cell, Devin continued. What it feels like to be powerless, to be disbelieved, to be judged before trial. And then you will learn to never make another person feel that way. Do you understand? All three nodded silently. Verbally, please. Yes, Your Honor, they said in unison. Their voices were hollow, defeated, but perhaps for the first time beginning to understand. This court is adjourned. The gavel struck one final time. Devin stood. He gathered his papers methodically. He exited through the judge's chambers. The room remained silent for 10 full seconds after he left. Then chaos erupted. Reporters rushed out to file stories. Observers talked over each other. The jury filed out looking shaken. They'd witnessed something extraordinary. Foster packed his briefcase slowly. He looked at the three officers one last time. You just witnessed the most merciful verdict you'll ever receive. Don't waste it. He left them sitting there at the defendant's table, alone, processing what had just happened. In the hallway, media surrounded Devin. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward. Judge Mitchell, how does it feel to preside over your own case? It feels like justice, which should feel normal, but apparently doesn't. Will this lead to broader reforms? That's the goal. Individual justice is temporary. Systemic reform is permanent. What message do you have for other judges? Devin paused, considered carefully. Pay attention to the data. Listen to the communities you serve. Your robe gives you power, but that power means nothing if it's not used to protect the powerless. Today, I was powerful enough to protect myself. Most people aren't. We need systems that protect everyone, not just judges. He walked to his car, Sarah beside him. Dr. Rodriguez followed. You did it, Sarah said quietly. We did it, Devin corrected. This was never about one person. 3 days after the hearing, the Crawford County Commission held an emergency meeting. The chamber was packed. County commissioners, Sheriff Harrison, community members, media, every seat filled. Commission Chairman Robert Davis called the meeting to order. 65 years old, farmer, 3 decades in local government. He'd never seen attention like this. We're here to discuss implementation of the consent decree. Judge Mitchell has agreed to present a framework. Devin stood. He carried a bound document, 47 pages, charts, data, policy recommendations. The product of 2 weeks of intensive work. Crawford County Policing Reform Framework, he said simply. He distributed copies to each commissioner. I'm going to present 5 structural reforms. These aren't suggestions. Under the consent decree, failure to implement within 180 days triggers state intervention. Let's begin. The room leaned forward, listening. Reform 1. Civilian Review Board. 9 members. County residents. 3-year terms. Reviews all use of force incidents and citizen complaints. 3 seats reserved for Black community members to ensure diverse perspective. Commissioner Ellen Rodriguez raised her hand. Who appoints them? The commission appoints 6. Community organizations nominate and elect 3. This prevents political capture. What's their authority? They can recommend discipline, training, or policy changes. The sheriff must respond in writing within 30 days. If the sheriff rejects recommendations, they can appeal to the state. Harrison shifted uncomfortably. He didn't like external oversight, but he said nothing. Reform 2. Early warning system. Software that tracks officer behavior patterns. Excessive force complaints. Dismissed charges. Citizen complaints. Body camera malfunctions. Officers flagged after 3 incidents in 12 months trigger mandatory review. What kind of review? Davis asked. Psychological evaluation. Retraining. Possible reassignment. The goal isn't punishment. It's intervention before patterns become tragedies. Harrison spoke for the first time. Judge Mitchell, with respect, this will create a culture of fear. Officers won't want to do their jobs. Devin turned to him calmly. Sheriff, Officers who do their jobs correctly have nothing to fear from documentation. Officers who abuse their authority should fear documentation. That's the point. The room went quiet. The data shows which officers generate complaints and which don't. Some officers work 30 years without a single excessive force complaint. Others generate 5 in 3 years. This system identifies the difference. Reform 3. Community Liaison Program. Every officer spends 8 hours monthly at community centers, schools, local events, not in uniform, not on duty, building relationships, not just enforcing. Deputy Chief Morrison spoke up. That's 64 hours per officer annually. We don't have the staffing. Then hire more officers, or accept that policing isn't just response, it's prevention, it's trust. Budget accordingly. Devon showed data from other departments that had implemented similar programs. Crime rates decreased, community satisfaction increased, officer retention improved. When people know their officers as humans, not just badges, cooperation increases, tips increase, de-escalation becomes easier. Reform 4. Financial accountability. Crawford County will pay a $250,000 settlement. I'm donating it to Tennessee Legal Aid Society. But more important, your insurance premiums will increase due to this violation. That hits the budget. That forces accountability. Davis frowned. Judge, we're a small county. Budget increases hurt services. Then don't violate civil rights. Insurance companies are excellent at risk assessment. They're telling you this behavior is expensive. Listen. Devon showed the math. Average settlement for civil rights violations, $1.2 million. Training and prevention costs, $80,000 annually. Prevention is cheaper than lawsuits, every single time. Reform 5. Mandatory reporting. Traffic stop data goes public quarterly. Race, reason, duration, search, arrest, no exceptions. Transparency creates accountability. He showed Crawford County's current numbers, the 7-2 times disparity, the search rates, the dropped charge percentages. These numbers are shameful. Publishing them quarterly will force improvement because nobody wants to explain why the disparity persists. Commissioner Rodriguez asked the question everyone was thinking. Judge Mitchell, do you believe our officers are racist? Devon paused. The room held its breath. I believe they operate in a system with racial disparities, whether that's explicit bias, implicit bias, or structural incentives, doesn't change the outcome. Black drivers are arrested more often for the same behaviors. That's what the data shows. These reforms address the system, not individual souls. It was a careful answer. True, measured, political, but honest. The commission voted 7-2. The framework passed. Harrison looked at Devon. When do we start? Tomorrow. The reforms began immediately. Harrison hired a consultant to set up the early warning system. The commission appointed a nominating committee for the Civilian Review Board. Officers were enrolled in bias training courses. All rise. The bailiff's voice echoed. And when that door opened, Officer Henderson's face went white. The man he'd handcuffed was wearing judicial robes. 1 week later, Devon received a call from Magistrate Cooper, the woman who'd arraigned him. Her voice was quiet, ashamed. Judge Mitchell, I need to speak with you. They met at a coffee shop outside Crawford County. Neutral ground. Cooper looked tired, worn down. I should have known, Cooper said. When you asked about Canon 3-2, I should have looked closer, asked more questions. I just processed you like everyone else. Devon sipped his coffee. That's exactly the problem, Magistrate Cooper. You processed me like everyone else, but I wasn't everyone else. I was someone whose rights were violated, and you missed it. Cooper nodded. The Judicial Commission reprimanded me, formal reprimand on my record, 20 hours of continuing education on constitutional rights. Good. Cooper looked surprised. That's it? Just good? Devon leaned forward. Magistrate Cooper, you had one job that day. Protect my rights. You failed. Not because you're malicious, because you're complacent. The system runs on complacency. The reprimand is fair. Learn from it. Make sure it never happens again. Cooper left looking smaller than when she arrived, but perhaps beginning to understand her role in the system. Devon stayed, ordered another coffee, reflected. Sarah called. How'd it go? She apologized. Did you accept? I acknowledged it. Acceptance implies forgiveness. I'm not there yet. Sarah understood. She always did. The state report comes out next month. Are you ready? Yes. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation completed its comprehensive review. The findings were released to the public in September. The report was damning. Crawford County Sheriff's Department, pattern of discriminatory enforcement, insufficient oversight, inadequate training, systemic failures at multiple levels. The recommendations aligned perfectly with Devon's framework. Because Devon had consulted on the investigation, his expertise, his experience, his data had shaped the analysis. The report went further. It recommended state monitoring for 2 years. If disparities didn't improve, the state could assume control of the department, direct intervention. Harrison read the report in his office, alone. He was 58 years old, 3 terms as sheriff. He'd never faced anything like this. He called Devon. Judge Mitchell, I need your help. I'm listening. I don't know how to fix this. The report, the numbers. I've been sheriff for 12 years. This happened on my watch. Devon was quiet for a moment. Sheriff, awareness is the first step. You're aware now. Implement the reforms. Actually implement them. Not for compliance, for change. But will you help? I'll monitor, I'll advise, but this is your department. You fix it. Harrison took a breath. Okay. 6 weeks after implementation, the first quarterly report was released. The numbers told a story. Traffic stops of black drivers decreased 42%. Suspicious activity arrests decreased 59%. The numbers were moving. Slowly, but moving. The Civilian Review Board held its first meeting, heard 4 cases, found in favor of officers in 3 cases, against in 1. The one case where they found against the officer involved excessive force during a wellness check. The officer was suspended for 30 days, retrained, reassigned to desk duty for 6 months. The officer complained. He appealed. The state upheld the decision. The system was working. Devon received letters, hundreds of them, from people who'd been arrested in Crawford County, from people across Tennessee, from across the country. One letter stood out, from a mother in Memphis. My son has been arrested 5 times for suspicious activity. Never charged, never convicted, just arrested. Thank you for showing that the system can change. My son is afraid of police. Maybe now he won't have to be. Devon kept that letter in his desk drawer, a reminder of why this mattered. Henderson resigned 4 months after the hearing. He couldn't handle the scrutiny, the oversight, the knowledge that every action was documented and reviewed. He moved to private security, couldn't work in law enforcement again. The consent decree followed him. Barnes stayed. He completed the bias training. He met with community members at the liaison events. He slowly, painfully began to understand what he'd done. 1 year later, Barnes would become the department's community liaison coordinator. The transformation surprised everyone, including himself. At one community event, a black teenager approached him. "You're the officer who arrested Judge Mitchell." Barnes nodded. "I am." "Why'd you do it?" Barnes could have made excuses, blamed protocols, claimed he was following orders. Instead, he said, "Because I saw a black man in an expensive car and assumed he didn't belong." I was wrong. I'm working every day to make sure I never make that assumption again. The teenager studied him. That's honest. It's the least I owe. Caldwell took early retirement. He was 46, 22 years on the force. He left quietly. No ceremony, no farewell party, just gone. Sheriff Harrison ran for re-election. His opponent used the incident against him, called him weak, said he'd caved to outside pressure, made the department look bad. Harrison won by 3 points, narrow victory, but he won on a platform of reform, on transparency, on accountability. On election night, he called Devon. "I didn't think I'd make it." "You earned it," Devon said. "Don't waste it." "I won't." The reforms took deeper root. The Civilian Review Board became a model. Other Tennessee counties requested the framework, asked how to implement it. Harrison presented at a state law enforcement conference, shared what worked, what didn't, what they were still learning. The body cam system worked flawlessly. Cloud storage meant no more convenient malfunctions. Officers complained at first. Then they realized the cameras protected them too. When complaints were false, the footage proved it. Trust worked both ways. The early warning system flagged 6 officers in the first year. 3 were retrained successfully. 2 were reassigned to different duties. 1 was terminated for repeated violations. The system worked. The traffic stop data told the clearest story. Year 1, 7, 2 times disparity. Year 2, 4, 1 times. Still too high, still unjust, but improving, moving in the right direction. Devon presented the data at the National Judicial Conference. 1,200 judges attended from across the country. They listened. "Data doesn't lie," Devon said. 7.2 times. That number should haunt every person who says discrimination is rare or exaggerated. A judge from Alabama raised his hand. What if the data is explained by crime rates in different communities? Different behaviors? Devon was ready. He'd anticipated this question. "We controlled for that. We controlled for time of day, location, officer assignment, reported crime rates, and demographic factors. The disparity persists across all controls." Next question. The room went silent. No more challenges. Devon continued. "I didn't want money from Crawford County. I wanted a mirror. I wanted these officers, this county, this system to see themselves as I saw them that night. Data is that mirror. It reflects what we'd rather not see. The question isn't whether the disparities exist. The data proves they do. The question is what we do about it." The conference gave him a standing ovation. Not because they all agreed with everything, because he'd forced them to look at something they'd been avoiding. Devon played the footage, every second documented, every word recorded. And then he asked the question that would destroy Henderson's defense. "Officer, did you manually disable your body cam?" Devon appeared on 60 Minutes. The segment aired in September 2024. 18.7 million viewers. The most watched episode of the season. The interviewer, veteran journalist Patricia Morgan, asked the key question everyone wanted answered. "Judge Mitchell, you were arrested, humiliated, denied your constitutional rights. Did you ever consider physical resistance or legal aggression, suing for millions?" Devon's answer became the most quoted part of the interview. "Violence would have confirmed their bias. A cash settlement would have enriched me but changed nothing. I wanted structural change. I wanted policy. I wanted data collection that outlasts me. Protections that help people I'll never meet. Accountability systems that function when cameras aren't watching. That's not revenge. That's citizenship. That's what the bench taught me." The clip went viral. 42 million views across platforms. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. It spread everywhere. Young people quoted it, made graphics, created art inspired by it. "That's not revenge, that's citizenship," became a rallying cry. Devon received an invitation from the Tennessee State Legislature. They were considering Senate Bill 847, statewide body camera mandate, cloud storage, no manual disable function, automatic activation protocols. He testified in March 2025. He brought his data, he brought his story, he brought his calm, devastating logic. "Senators, you have an opportunity to prevent what happened to me from happening to anyone else in Tennessee. Body cameras work only if they're actually on. Manual disable functions defeat the purpose. This bill eliminates that loophole. I urge you to pass it." The bill passed 28-5. Governor signed it in October. Devon stood behind her at the signing ceremony. "This is Devon's law," the governor said. Devon shook his head in the photo. He didn't want his name on it, but the name stuck. Media called it Devon's Law. The public called it Devon's Law. It became Devon's Law. Law schools added his case to their curricula. Over 200 schools by 2026. Students studied the consent decree, the statistical analysis, the systemic approach, the way one case became a catalyst for broader change. Devin gave guest lectures, 6 schools in the first year: Yale, Harvard, Stanford, Howard, University of Tennessee, Vanderbilt. He talked about implicit bias, about data-driven reform, about the importance of lived experience in judicial decision-making. At Yale Law School, a student asked the question many were thinking. "Judge Mitchell, how did you stay so calm during your arrest? Weren't you afraid?" Devin thought about it carefully. "I stayed calm because I knew anger wouldn't help me, and I stayed calm because I was gathering evidence. Every word they said, every action they took. I was already building my case. Fear is natural, but I couldn't let it control me." Another student raised her hand. "Would this have worked if you weren't a judge? If you were just a regular person?" Devin's face grew serious. "No, that's the problem. My title gave me tools most people don't have. Resources, knowledge, access. That's why the reform can't be about protecting judges. It has to be about protecting everyone. The mother working 2 jobs, the teenager driving home from basketball practice, the grandfather going to the grocery store. Everyone deserves the protection I was able to demand." Rosa Martinez, the convenience store clerk who'd filmed the arrest, applied to law school. She'd saved the security footage. She'd testified at the hearing. Her courage had been noticed. Devin wrote her recommendation letter. It was powerful, specific, compelling. Rosa Martinez demonstrated extraordinary courage under pressure. When confronted with injustice, she didn't look away. She documented it. She testified about it. She stood up when staying silent would have been easier. These are the qualities that make exceptional lawyers. I recommend her without reservation. She was accepted to University of Tennessee Law School, full scholarship. She called him crying. "I can't believe this. I can't believe I'm going to law school." "I can," Devin said. "You did the right thing when it mattered. That's what lawyers do. That's what the good ones do anyway." The 2 customers who'd filmed the arrest from the gas pumps joined their local NAACP chapter. Both became police reform advocates. One ran for city council in his district. He won. His platform was accountability, transparency, community policing. Judge Patricia Stewart, Devin's mentor, launched the Judicial Equity Initiative, a training program for judges. How to recognize systemic bias in their own courtrooms, how to address it, how to reform it. 200 judges completed the training in year 1, 400 in year 2. It was spreading, growing, changing the culture of the judiciary itself. Sheriff Harrison, despite everything, earned reluctant respect. He implemented every reform, actually implemented them, not just on paper, in practice. He met with community leaders monthly, published the data even when it looked bad, held himself accountable publicly. Year 3 data showed continued improvement. Traffic stop disparity, down to 2, 3 times. Still not equal, still not just, but moving steadily toward equity. Harrison hired Crawford County's first black deputy sheriff, promoted her to community liaison supervisor within a year. She was good at it, better than anyone expected. She built bridges, created trust, changed the culture from inside. The Civilian Review Board heard 47 cases in year 1. Found for officers 31 times, against 16 times. The board's independence proved its legitimacy. It wasn't rubber stamping either side. It was actually reviewing, actually holding people accountable, actually protecting both officers and citizens. Devin returned to Crawford County 1 year after his arrest. He visited the convenience store. The owner had renamed it Mitchell Stop. Devin hadn't given permission, but the owner, a Vietnamese immigrant named Thanh Nguyen, refused to change it back. "You changed this place," Nguyen said. "People are safer now. Police are different now. I honor that." He donated 10% of coffee sales to civil rights organizations. $15,000 in year 1, $32,000 in year 2. Devin stood at the pump where he'd been arrested, exactly where he'd stood 14 months earlier. He looked at the spot where Henderson had approached. He felt nothing. No anger, no bitterness, just resolve. He'd turned the worst night of his life into something meaningful, something lasting. Devin wrote an essay for The Atlantic, published in September 2024. It began with this paragraph. I've sentenced men to prison. I've upheld constitutional rights against government intrusion. I've written judicial opinions that create precedent for decades. But I've never felt the weight of injustice until I carried it in handcuffs. The judge's robe creates distance, necessary professional distance from the defendant's reality. That night stripped away the distance. I stood where thousands stand daily, powerless, disbelieved, judged before trial. The difference? I had tools to fight back. Most don't. Reform must be the bridge. The essay went viral. 3 million reads in the first week. It was shared in classrooms, in churches, in community meetings. It sparked conversations across the country. Dr. Rodriguez presented the data. 89% of suspicious activity arrests of Black individuals resulted in dropped charges. For others, 34%. The courtroom went silent. Devin continued his work beyond Crawford County. He testified before Congress on police reform legislation in November 2024, the Senate Judiciary Committee. Cameras everywhere, national attention. Senator Patricia Williams led the questioning. Judge Mitchell, you've become a symbol of reform. What would you say to those who claim these incidents are isolated, that most police officers are good people doing a hard job? I'd say both things can be true, Senator. Most officers are decent people, and the system they work in produces unjust outcomes. Those aren't contradictory. Systems shape behavior. When body cameras can be disabled, they will be disabled. When searches aren't tracked, discrimination can't be measured. When civilian oversight doesn't exist, accountability suffers. Good people in bad systems produce bad outcomes. We need to fix the systems. The testimony was covered extensively. C-SPAN, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. Everyone had an opinion. Devin consulted with 12 cities on implementing civilian review boards. Atlanta, Memphis, Nashville, Birmingham, Charlotte, Jacksonville, Louisville, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Kansas City, New Orleans, Detroit. Each city had its own challenges, its own history, its own resistance. But the framework worked. The data-driven approach was hard to argue against. The Mitchell Fellowship was established at University of Tennessee in January 2025. 12 young Black law students received full scholarships annually. Devin mentored each one personally, met with them quarterly, answered their questions, shared his experience. One fellow, Marcus Thompson, asked him during their first meeting, "Do you regret driving through Crawford County that night?" Devin smiled. "I regret that it happened. I don't regret what came from it. Pain can be transformative if you channel it correctly. That night could have made me bitter. Instead, it made me determined." The phrase Mitchell Standard entered the reform lexicon. Data-driven police accountability, statistical analysis to prove disparities, civilian oversight with real power, financial consequences for departments that violated rights. Other Tennessee counties adopted similar frameworks voluntarily, 14 counties by year 2. It was spreading organically. Sheriffs were talking to each other, sharing what worked, learning from each other. Georgia, Alabama, and Kentucky requested Devin's framework, state-level interest. The model was scaling beyond Tennessee. The U.S. Department of Justice cited Crawford County reforms in 2025 guidance documents for consent decrees nationwide. Devin's work became the template. A documentary was made. The Judge and the System, PBS, 2025. It won an Emmy for Outstanding Documentary. Devin attended the ceremony but gave the Emmy to Rosa Martinez. "You filmed it," he said. "This belongs to you." She cried, kept the Emmy in her law school apartment. Motivation during difficult exams. The film ended with Devin returning to his courtroom in Atlanta. Business as usual. Except nothing was usual anymore. Every defendant who stood before him now stood before someone who'd been in their position. Not metaphorically, Literally. He'd been arrested, handcuffed, denied his rights. He knew what it felt like. His sentencing changed, more nuanced, more aware, more just. He asked different questions, considered different factors, thought more deeply about systemic issues versus individual culpability. His colleagues noticed. Judge Stewart asked him about it over lunch. "You're different now. Softer in some ways. Harder in others." "I am," Devin agreed. "I understand what I couldn't before. The fear, the helplessness, the knowledge that the system can fail you even when you've done nothing wrong. I can't unknow that. Are you glad it happened?" Devin considered this carefully. "I'm glad something good came from it. I'm not glad it was necessary. I'm not glad that thousands of people experienced this without the resources to fight back. But I'm grateful I could turn my experience into something that helps others." The gas station became an unofficial memorial. People left flowers, signs, messages of solidarity. One sign read simply, "Justice here." Nguyen kept it up, maintained it, protected it. It became part of the store's identity. Devin's story was taught in 200 law schools by 2026. His case was in textbooks. His consent decree was studied. His statistical methods were replicated. His calm mugshot became a meme. The caption, "When you're not mad, just disappointed on a constitutional level." Devin found this funny. Sarah did not. "They're trivializing what happened to you," she said. "No," Devin disagreed. "They're making it accessible. If a meme gets a 20-year-old to think about civil rights, I'll take it. Whatever works." 3 years after his arrest, Crawford County released its comprehensive data report. The numbers told a powerful story. Traffic stop disparity, 1, 8 times, nearly equal. Not perfect, but approaching it. Citizen complaints, down 61% from pre-reform levels. Community trust survey, 73% of residents reported increased confidence in police. Devin read the report in his chambers in Atlanta. He called Harrison. "You did it." Harrison's voice was tired but proud. "We did it. You gave us the map. We followed it. Keep following it. This isn't finished. It's never finished. But you're moving in the right direction. I will." These are the kind of real-life stories that remind us change is possible. Stories like Devin's prove that touching narratives don't require violence to be powerful. They show that systems being challenged and reformed offer hope. Devin closed his essay in The Atlantic with these words, "I was arrested for nothing, and that nothing became the foundation for something." This is not a story about one man's vindication. It's about the thousands of nothings, the stops, the searches, the suspicions, the handcuffs without cause that happen when cameras aren't rolling, when judges aren't wearing suits, when no one with power is watching. We watched this time. Now we build systems that watch always. His final message to everyone who heard his story was simple but powerful. If this story moved you, don't let that feeling dissipate when you scroll past. Here's what you can do. Share your story. Comment below about a time you witnessed or experienced injustice. Silence protects systems. Stories expose them. Your voice matters. The consent decree wasn't punishment. It was education. And these 3 officers were about to learn what Devin learned in that cell. What powerlessness actually feels like. Research your local police department's traffic stop data, Devin continued in his public statements. Most cities publish it. If the numbers look like Crawford County's did, attend a city council meeting. Ask questions. Demand answers. Demand accountability. The message resonated. City council meetings across Tennessee saw increased attendance. Citizens asking about data, about disparities, about oversight. In Memphis, a community organizer named James Williams used Devin's framework. He presented his city's data to the council. 4 times disparity in traffic stops. The council was shocked. They hadn't known, or hadn't wanted to know. They created a task force. Williams was appointed to it. 6 months later, Memphis had its own civilian review board. Devin consulted on the structure. In Nashville, a similar pattern. In Chattanooga, in Knoxville. Devon's case created a template, a roadmap. Others were following it. The gavel Devon carried that night wasn't just his. It belonged to every person who refused to accept that's just how things are. In Crawford County, the reforms deepened. The Civilian Review Board met monthly. They reviewed use of force incidents, citizen complaints, officer commendations too. It wasn't just about punishment, it was about understanding patterns. Board member Reverend Marcus Thompson spoke at one meeting. "We've reviewed 47 cases this year. In 31, the officer acted appropriately. In 16, there were problems. That 16 is why we exist. Those are 16 people whose complaints might have been ignored before. 16 families who got answers. That matters." The early warning system flagged Officer Davis in month 8, 3 citizen complaints in 6 months. Not excessive force, but discourtesy, dismissive attitude, talking down to citizens. He was sent to retraining, communication skills, de-escalation, cultural competency. He was angry at first, felt targeted, but the training was good, run by a former officer who'd been through similar issues, someone who understood. Davis came back different, not perfect, but better, more aware, more careful with his words. 6 months later, he received 3 commendations, citizens praising his professionalism, his patience, his respect. The system worked. Intervention before termination, education before punishment. The community liaison program exceeded expectations. Officers spending time in neighborhoods, not enforcing, just being present, being human. Officer Martinez started coaching youth basketball every Tuesday and Thursday. Kids got to know him as Coach Martinez, not Officer Martinez. One kid, 13 years old, told his mother, "Coach Martinez is cool. I didn't know cops could be cool." His mother, who'd been arrested twice for suspicious activity, never charged, never convicted, just arrested, had tears in her eyes. "Maybe things are changing," she said. The traffic stop data was published quarterly on the county website. Color-coded charts, easy to understand, transparent. Year 1, Quarter 1, 7. 2 times disparity. Year 1, Quarter 4, 4, 8 times. Year 2, Quarter 4, 2, 3 times. Year 3, Quarter 4, 1, 8 times. The trend was clear, undeniable. The reforms were working. Community meetings celebrated these numbers, but they also acknowledged, 1, 8 times was still too high, still unjust. The work wasn't finished. Harrison spoke at one meeting. "We've made progress, real progress, but we're not done. We won't be done until that number is 1.0, until everyone, regardless of race, is treated exactly the same. That's the goal." The room applauded. Harrison had changed. 3 years ago, he'd have been defensive, resistant. Now he was leading the reform. Devon attended that meeting, sat in the back, didn't speak, just observed. Afterward, Harrison approached him. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for doing the work," Devon replied. "This isn't easy. I know that, but it's necessary." "It is, and it's making a difference, real difference." They shook hands. Not as adversaries, as partners in reform. The financial impact had been real. Crawford County's insurance premiums increased 47% after the consent decree. That hurt the budget, but 3 years later, they'd had 0 civil rights lawsuits, 0 settlements. The insurance company took notice. Premiums were reduced 15%. Commissioner Davis presented the data to the commission. Reform isn't just morally right, it's fiscally responsible. We're saving money by treating people fairly. The commission approved increased funding for the liaison program, for training, for the Civilian Review Board's operations. Investment in justice was paying dividends. Barnes, the officer who'd stayed and transformed, spoke at a law enforcement conference in 2026. He told his story, his role in Devon's arrest, his shame, his growth. "I arrested a judge because I made assumptions based on race. That's the truth. It's uncomfortable. It's shameful. But it's true." The reforms in Crawford County didn't just change policies. They changed me. I see people differently now. I question my assumptions. I check my biases. I'm not perfect, but I'm better. And that's what reform is about. Getting better. Every day. Every interaction. The room was silent. Then applause. Respect for his honesty. Other officers approached him after. How do I do that? How do I change? Barnes's answer was simple. Start by admitting you need to. That's the hardest part. After that, it's just work. Rosa Martinez graduated law school in May 2026. Devin attended her graduation, sat with her family, cheered when she walked across the stage. She'd passed the bar on her first attempt. She was joining Tennessee Legal Aid, the organization Devin had donated his settlement to, full circle. I'm going to help people who can't help themselves, she told Devin. Like you helped everyone by what you did in Crawford County. You helped too, Devin reminded her. You filmed it. You testified. You were brave when it mattered. I was scared. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action despite fear. You had that. She started work in June. Her first case was a wrongful arrest. A young black man, stopped for suspicious activity, no probable cause. Held overnight. Charges dropped. Rosa filed a civil rights complaint. Used Devin's framework, statistical analysis of that department's arrest patterns. The pattern was clear. The case settled. Policy reforms implemented. The young man got justice, got answers. Rosa called Devin. I won my first case. I knew you would. I used everything I learned from your case, the framework, the data, the systematic approach. It worked. Good, that's what it's for. Keep using it. Keep fighting. The Mitchell Fellowship students gathered quarterly with Devin. 12 young lawyers, brilliant, passionate, committed to justice. One asked, how do you stay hopeful when the system seems so broken? Devin thought about it. I stay hopeful because I've seen change happen. I've lived it. 3 years ago, Crawford County had a 7.2 times disparity. Today it's 1.8. That's change. Real change. It's not enough, but it's progress. And progress is possible. That's what keeps me going. Another student. What's next for you? Same thing as always. Cases, decisions, justice. But now with deeper understanding, with lived experience. I'm a better judge because of what happened. I wouldn't have chosen it. But I can use it. That's what we do with trauma. We transform it. We use it to help others. The reforms in Crawford County inspired legislation beyond Tennessee. Federal legislation, the Law Enforcement Accountability Act of 2026. Mandatory body cameras with cloud storage, no manual disable functions, civilian oversight requirements for departments over certain sizes, data collection and public reporting requirements. Devin testified in support. The bill passed the House, stalled in the Senate, but the conversation was happening. National conversation about reform. 6 months later, the disparities had dropped. Progress was happening. Real, measurable progress. 3 years after his arrest, Devin Mitchell sat in his chambers in Atlanta. The morning sun streamed through the windows. Coffee steamed on his desk. Files stacked neatly. Another day. Another set of cases. Another opportunity for justice. But he wasn't the same judge who'd driven through Crawford County that night. He was changed, deepened, more aware of the weight of every decision. A knock on the door. His clerk entered. Judge Mitchell, the Crawford County Commission is on the phone. They'd like to speak with you. Devin picked up. Commissioner Davis's voice came through. Judge Mitchell, I wanted to be the first to tell you. The data just came in. Q4, year 3. The disparity is now 1.3 times. We're approaching parity. Devin leaned back, smiled. That's remarkable progress. Commissioner, it's because of you, because of what you built here. It's because of what you implemented. I provided a framework, you did the work. Will you come speak at our annual community meeting? People want to hear from you. I'll be there. He hung up, looked out the window. 1.3 times. Not perfect, not equal, but moving steadily toward justice. The Mitchell Protocol had been adopted by 47 jurisdictions across 8 states by late 2026. Each adapted it to local needs. But the core remained: data-driven accountability, civilian oversight, financial consequences, transparency. A documentary crew had followed Devon for 6 months, PBS special airing in 2027. 3 years after, The Mitchell Effect. They filmed him in court, in community meetings, teaching at law schools, mentoring the fellowship students, living his normal life, which was remarkable specifically because it was normal. "You could have become a full-time activist," the director noted. "Why didn't you?" "Because I'm a judge," Devon said simply. "That's my calling. That's where I can do the most good. One case at a time, one decision at a time, one defendant treated fairly at a time." The Crawford County case was important. "But it's not my identity. It's one chapter. I have many more to write." Sarah watched the interview footage. "You've become a symbol whether you want to be or not. Symbols are useful, but I'm still just a person, a judge, trying to do my job well. You're more than that now. Maybe. But I can't let that change how I approach the bench. Every defendant deserves a judge who sees them as an individual, not as a symbol, not as a statistic, as a person. That hasn't changed." Henderson, the officer who'd arrested him, was now working security at a shopping mall in Florida. He'd moved away, couldn't face Crawford County anymore. The shame was too much. But he was different too. He'd completed the bias training, attended therapy, read books about systemic racism, actually read them, actually tried to understand. He called Devon in October 2026. Devon was surprised to see the number, shocked that Henderson had kept his number. "Judge Mitchell, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I needed to say something." Devon waited. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't undo what I did. But I'm sorry. I was wrong. I made assumptions based on race. I abused my power. I violated your rights. I'm sorry." Devon was quiet for a long moment. "Why are you calling me now? 3 years later?" "Because it took me 3 years to understand what I did, to really understand. Not just that I arrested a judge, but that I arrested a human being, violated his dignity, his rights, his humanity, because of the color of his skin. It took 3 years for that to really sink in." "What do you want from me, Officer Henderson?" "Nothing. I don't deserve anything from you. I just needed you to know that I understand now. And I'm sorry." Devon thought about it. About forgiveness. About grace. About what it meant to hold people accountable while also allowing for growth. "I appreciate you calling. I accept your apology. That doesn't mean what you did was okay. It wasn't. But people can change. I hope you have. I'm trying, every day." They hung up. Devon sat with that conversation. He didn't tell Sarah immediately. He processed it alone first. Forgiveness was complicated. Justice didn't require it, but healing sometimes did. He wasn't sure he'd fully forgiven Henderson, but he was open to the possibility. That felt like growth. The Mitchell Fellowship announced its second cohort in November 2026. 12 more students. 24 total now. Building a network of lawyers committed to justice, to reform, to using the system to fix the system. Devon met with them all, new and continuing students. 24 young people who'd been inspired by his story, who wanted to make a difference. "What's the most important thing we can do?" one asked. "Stay humble. Stay curious. Stay connected to the communities you serve. Don't let the law become abstract. It affects real people, real lives. Remember that. Always." The Tennessee legislature passed the Mitchell Act in early 2027. Comprehensive police reform, body cameras, civilian oversight, data reporting, financial accountability, everything Devon had advocated for, statewide. Governor signed it at the Crawford County Courthouse, symbolic location. Devon stood behind her, Harrison stood beside him. Barnes was there. Rosa Martinez, Dr. Rodriguez. The Civilian Review Board members. This law exists because one man refused to accept injustice, the governor said. Because he had the courage to demand accountability. Because he transformed his pain into policy. Judge Mitchell, Tennessee, thanks you. Devin spoke briefly. This isn't about me. It's about everyone who's been stopped without cause, searched without reason, arrested without evidence, denied their rights. This law protects them. That's what matters. Not my name on it, but the protection it provides. The crowd applauded. The cameras captured everything, history being made. But Devin was already thinking about tomorrow, about the cases on his docket, about the defendants who'd stand before him, about justice, always about justice. Thank you to everyone who shared your locations with us. Seeing this global community united for accountability and truth proves that justice is a universal human value. If this story moved you, please subscribe for more stories of everyday people standing against systemic injustice and creating lasting change. Until next time, remember that one moment of courage can reform an entire system. Devin returned to his chambers after the signing ceremony. He looked at the gavel on his desk, the same gavel that had sat in his briefcase that night, the same gavel that had presided over the case that changed everything. He picked it up, felt its weight, not just physical weight, but the weight of responsibility, of justice, of all the decisions yet to come. Sarah appeared in the doorway. Ready to go home? Almost. One more thing. He sat at his computer, opened his email, began typing to the fellowship students. The gavel I carry represents more than judicial authority. It represents every person who refuses to accept injustice as inevitable. Your voices matter. Your actions matter. Use them. The system won't fix itself. We fix it. One case. One policy. One courageous act at a time. Keep going. The work is never finished, but it's always worth doing. He hit send, gathered his briefcase, walked out with Sarah. The Crawford County case was over. The reforms were implemented. The data showed progress. The laws were passed, but the work continued. It always would. Because justice isn't a destination. It's a direction, a commitment, a daily choice to use power in service of what's right. Devin Mitchell chose it. Every day, every case, every decision. That was his legacy. Not the arrest, not the viral video, not the laws named after him. His legacy was showing up, day after day, doing the work, demanding better, building systems that protected everyone. That was enough. That was everything. The sun set over Atlanta. Devin drove home. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new challenges, new opportunities for justice. He was ready. He'd always be ready. Because that's what judges do. What good judges do. They show up. They listen. They decide fairly. They demand accountability. They transform pain into policy, injustice into reform, individual grievance into systemic change. Devin Mitchell had done that, and he would keep doing it. For as long as he wore the robe. That was the real story. Not one night in Crawford County, but every day after, every case, every decision, every person who stood before him and received justice. That was the Mitchell Protocol. That was the legacy. And it would outlast him. Outlast all of them. Because good systems, once built, endure. Justice endures.